How's it going, everyone? Welcome to this week's Q&A. So like any other week, if you want a chance of one of your questions being answered, make sure you drop a comment down below and I'll try to answer either that question in your comment itself or in a future video just like this one, or make a dedicated video if need be. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get started with the first question of the week. And what is the reliability and proper maintenance of the J30AC? So the J30AC is found in a TLX and MDX Type S. It's a 3.0 direct injection turbo engine. So the fact that it's turbo, in my opinion, always needs extra attention, maintenance, and care versus a naturally aspirated engine. And then it's also direct injection, which, brings up its own share of issues. So what I would do and what I do on my personal vehicle, now this is for the engine alone. If you want a full maintenance video on the TLX Type S / MDX Type S, I do have a maintenance video on that and I'll share it in the description section down below. So as far as the engine goes, I personally do 3,000 miles on my vehicle. I do drive it hard. It is modified, so that's what I choose to do. I completely ignore the algorithm because the algorithm will put me at about 9,000 to 10,000 mile oil change intervals, which is a recipe for disaster in the long term. So 3,000 to 5,000 miles, I think you're good. I wouldn't really go past it 5,000 miles, but completely up to you. But that is my professional opinion on that. So as far as other stuff goes, so 105,000 miles or 7 years, you're gonna look at replacing the timing belt package at that point. So timing belt, water pump, dry belt, and the tensioner is mechanical. So I don't necessarily think it'll be needed to be changed, although it could be that it is a good time to change it. So if it was hydraulic, I'll say absolutely no questions, but Honda did modify it for these newer engines. So I think they will be okay. But again, if you want some peace of mind, go ahead and change it. It might be pricey. Haven't really looked into it yet, but that's something for you to decide when that time does get there. So spark plugs, again, in my opinion, and for my vehicle, I'm gonna be doing between 45 and 60,000 miles. I'm actually gonna do them this time at 45 to see how they look, and then kind of base my opinion and assessment off of that. Also compare to a stock one, and you could probably do a stock one closer to 90,000, which is what Honda recommends. Although I would personally recommend no later than 60,000 miles on these vehicles. But again, that's totally up to you. Coolant every 60,000 miles or 3 years, I think is a good time to do it. Coolant does start to tend to turn acidic and kind of start causing some issues. So get that old coolant out of there, get the new coolant in there. So what's nice about these engines is they no longer require a valve adjustment. They don't have adjustable rockers. So that is a thing of the past for these engines at least. So some things that do concern me are the VCM gears leaking oil long term. So we'll see kind of how that plays out. This engine is fairly new, so hasn't been out for a lot of years and not a lot of them out there as of yet. So as they age, we'll see how this progresses. So something that I think will definitely leak is an oil pump like any other J series. Eventually they all end up leaking, and that is a good time to check and do at that time of the time belt, because to do the oil pump, you do have to remove the time belt. So great time to assess it and address it if needed. And the ram range seals on these vehicles, after like 10, 12, 15 years, they usually end up leaking. Sometimes they leak a little bit earlier, but that's typically when we start seeing, a lot of oil leaks with them. So that's basically the gist of it. So again, too early to tell long-term problems. We had some issues with the pilot side of things, which uses a 3.5 liter naturally aspirated version of this engine. So we'll kind of see how this all plays out. Seems like there's some initial bugs, but Honda has seemed to figure that out. So again, we'll see how this engine and series of platform and different variation of the J series plays out long-term. So hopefully that answers the question for you. All right, so this next question is, this person installed an aftermarket axle and it popped out. There could be a couple of reasons. So obviously reason number one being that it wasn't installed correctly, or the circuit that goes there, either depending if it's male or female, has it on one end or the other, could be either missing, damaged, defective, whatever the case may be. Or what usually happens is the axle is just a little bit shorter than the OEM one, and that's because the inner axle boot does not have enough air in it. So instead of putting pressure outwards towards the trans and the hub side of things, it's actually a little bit short, causing the axle to be in a vacuum state and pulling away from the transmission, and usually ends up pulling out that way. So I made a video on this subject. Again, I'll make sure I have it in the description section down below if you want to go ahead and take a look at it and how to remedy that. So if you do have an aftermarket axle, compared to your OEM one, if it looks shorter, then go ahead and put some air in that inner axle boot to prevent this from happening. I see it times and time again at our job. It happens when we do aftermarket axles. People decide to, opt for aftermarket because of just how much more inexpensive they are versus the OEM ones. Although I try to avoid that, but when other techs, kind of do this, and I happen not to be there or not catch it or whatever, because I'm always doing a ton of things, oftentimes they will come back just from a simple test drive around the block. Sometimes it'll leave and then the customer will come back on a tow truck. So not a good thing for anybody or any party involved. So, and then I explained to the technician, this is what happens. And if it does happen to be sliding in and out and kind of, rubbing the gears against each other, the splines, it could be that you damage the differential on the trans and may end up causing you to replace a diff or a trans or whatever. So something you definitely want to pay attention to when replacing these aftermarket axles. And again, I'll link that video in the description section down below if you want to go ahead and take a look at a perfect example of what happened and how I fixed that with another aftermarket axle, because we no longer put that same axle in the vehicle. We got another one, we paid for it, we covered it, whatever. Everyone was happy after that. So just, try to avoid this same exact scenario for yourself, a customer of yours or whatnot. I've seen it too many times. It's very simple to fix. So hopefully that answers the question for you. So the next question is, what is the most reliable engine that Honda has put out there in the last decade or so? And without any doubt, it is the K20 C2/Z5. So these engines are naturally aspirated, port injection, simple, nothing fancy about them. They get you from A to B. Even if you neglect them, they're still usually very hard to, get them to be damaged. So we've had one come through the shop with the rod knock. Not sure exactly what happened there. We had a second one that came in. I think either the head was cracked or the head gasket was blown or whatnot. But again, out of all these engines out there, these are by far the ones with the least amount of issues. So typically found in the Civic and the HRV, at least on Honda side. Ultra reliable. If you could get your hands on one of these vehicles with one of these engines, I would say absolutely go for it. Obviously, Honda does make great engines. They have one that I don't really approve of at all. We've talked about that engine tons of times. I don't even have to mention it. You guys already know which engine it is. So if you're looking for something reliable, definitely get yourself one of these K20 C2/Z5 engines found in the Civics, so naturally aspirated Civics, and the HRVs. Up to this date, you can get them on the Civics for 2025. That engine is no longer sold, so they opted for an Atkinson cycle engine, and a lot more related to the hybrid engine found in the hybrid Civic and versus what's actually found on the 24s and below naturally aspirated Civic. So hopefully that answers the question for you. All right, so next question is, what are my thoughts on the reliability on the FL5? So that is the current generation Honda Civic Type R. So I love the car. I love the idea of it. We do not see too many issues, partly in fact because there's just not that many out there on the road. And these people that buy these cars typically are real picky, and they're really selective on who services their vehicle. So oftentimes they'll go to their trusted mechanic, they'll do the work themselves. They're usually enthusiasts, so they're 9 out of 10 times they are handy. So we don't see too many that come through the shop. Usually when we do see one, something real simple or like a flat tire or something along those lines. We don't even do brakes that often on them at at our dealership. I'm sure a lot of other dealerships may have different experiences, but we may get one once a week, if that, versus, everything else that comes in, loads of them. So some common issues with them, and there's not many of them. The most common one being is the expansion tank ends up cracking and leaking over time. So the expansion tank is actually two pieces of plastic and they're glued together, and they leak at that seam. So there's a lot of aftermarket options out there. I personally will go for the PRL one, but again, there's a lot of different options out there. And if I owned one, I wouldn't even wait until it cracked. Honestly, I would just go ahead and purchase it. And just for peace of mind, you don't want to be out there in 2, 3, 4 hours away from home and have this thing crack on you and you can't make it home. So peace of mind, I would personally on my own, if I purchase one, this goes for the Civic Type R and Integra Type S, just go ahead and buy one. I've also seen them leak on base model Civics and ESIs, but from what I see on the forums, most of them are on the FL5s because just people push them more and just builds a lot of pressure and they end up leaking over time. So that would be number one thing I would address on them personally. So something that we do see often and usually is contributed to driver error is damaged second or third gear. So we have to go ahead and rip a trains apart, replace second, third gear. Usually it's one gear that's really, damaged in there. But if we see anything else that may cause an issue in the short-term or long-term future, then I personally address it at that point and, replace whatever is needed in there. Whatever I see is wrong, I look at all the gears, look at all the, the selectors, the ring, whatever, the synchros, everything. I look at everything, look at the forks, make sure nothing's bent, nothing's cracked, and just address whatever is needed at that point. Usually one of the gears is, pretty damaged to the point where either it grinds going in or it pops out. So there are some things you could do to avoid, have this happen to you, by removing some delay valves and stuff. So again, if it was my vehicle, I would absolutely go that route, remove all these delay valves. It was a common thing with the S2002. And when I had mine, that was the first thing I did. I was to remove the delay valve, and it was a big difference in driving experience. So other than that, some electrical issues here and there. I think there was a bulletin for a certain issue. But overall, great vehicles, super reliable. I don't foresee too many issues with the head gaskets, for instance. Head gasket, now, being forced induction, I think at one point it will blow. I think it'll be well into the 200,000 miles. In my personal opinion, even when you push these cars, they seem to hold a lot of power for a long period of time. So not something I would be concerned with, honestly, in my opinion. You're probably going to change a clutch way before that even happens. We do see a lot of clutches come into usually somebody who's either learning to drive a car manual for the first time or came out of something manual with way less torque and just cooks a clutch, fairly early. So if you have any input, make sure you drop a comment down below, but I would absolutely get one. I wouldn't be worried about anything else, short or long term. In my personal opinion, if I was driving it besides the expansion tank, and I would remove those delay valves ASAP. So hopefully that answers the question for you. All right, so last but not least, question of the week. What are my thoughts on a flat rate system? So I've been meaning to make a video on this. Maybe I still will, but the short answer is it's great and it sucks all at the same time, right? It's great when it's busy, everyone's making money, everything's going smoothly. Customers happy, work got done right, tech got paid, whatever, management got paid, everyone got paid, everything's great. When it's slow or it's warranty stuff, not so much, right? So the way flat rate system works, let's say a brake job, at my job at least, pays 2 hours. So 2 hours, great. You get it done in an hour, you get paid for 2 hours, you move on to the next car. Great. Now, if something goes wrong and you come across a seized rotor, you can't get off the car, the slide pins are rusted in there and you got to lubricate them, got to heat them up, whatever the case may be, and you spend all 2 hours, you still get paid 2 hours. If you spend 3 hours on a car, you still get paid 2 hours. So you kind of see where I'm going with this. So usually brakes are straightforward. Now, for instance, when we have to do catalytic converters on a Pilot and we run across a couple different issues. First of all, typically we have to drop the A pipe to get the manifold off eventually, right? So we go ahead and try to take out the bolts and everything's rusted. So now you spend an hour just removing those bolts. After that, you got to take out the intermediate shaft that's attached to the axle. That's usually seasoned there. So either it comes out and you spend a decent amount of time in it, or it breaks and you spend a decent amount of time in it. Now you need an axle, now you need a bracket, and Honda's going to be upset because it shouldn't be breaking, right? But Honda doesn't account for rusted stuff that we see here in the Northeast and plenty of areas across North America. So, and catalytic converters, I forget what they pay, but they're like under 2 hours. And oftentimes, will spend 3-4 hours to do a rear bank or bank one catalytic converter. It's just not a fun job to do, and it just doesn't pay accordingly to what it actually takes you. Now, if the car is new, like when they actually come up with these times on a brand new car, great, nothing's rusted. You could probably do it under an hour and a half, right? But as they age, and these catalytic converters oftentimes will be covered up to like 15 years, 150K or some crazy stuff. Now, at 150,000 miles or 140,000 miles, everything is going to be rusted, including the exhaust manifold bolts. So it's not fun. It takes a lot of times. You get a lot of frustrated people. You get the texts, you get the customers because it's taking long, you get the service advisors, the manager, everything, but you take the good with the bad. Obviously, you do more customer pay work versus a, warranty stuff in most cases, but with all these recalls, and everything going on, it is pretty frustrating. But again, you take the good with the bad. So it is what it is, or you take the bad with the good, whatever the saying is. And it is what it is. It's not a perfect system. It does work when it's overall busy and you have some sort of hustle in you. So if you're walking around dragging your feet all day, you're just not going to make money. So it is what it is. That's kind of on you. But if you try to do it, and usually it does work in your favor, everybody wins. So that's just the way it works. Is salary better? I don't think so, because you create a lot of, You create a lot of just laziness, in my opinion. May not be the case for everyone, but that typically happens when you are on a salary. So you hear, no matter what you do, no matter how productive you are, this is what you get paid. So you're not going to want to go the extra mile, the extra step, right? Because no matter if you produce 8 hours a day, 15 or 2, you still get paid your 8-hour shift. So that's kind of how it goes. So I do like it personally. It does have advantages, has some disadvantages, but overall, I think it does work okay. It could be better, but it's just the way it is. When I came into the industry, I had no idea this was a thing until it was too little too late. But now I'm kind of stuck with it. And again, I've learned how to use it. I've learned how to work with it. So you got to make the best of the situation and just stay positive and kind of keep open, be open-minded. And again, stay positive, because there's going to be good days, there's going to be bad days, good weeks, bad weeks, good months, and bad months. So just try to see the light at the end of the tunnel, and everything should be okay. So with that being said, catch you on the next one.